you still moving boxes, Ethan?" Blake's voice cut through the clink of silverware and low jazz humming through Sullivan's grill. His grin gleamed as he swirled the last sip of Cabernet in his glass. Across from him, I sliced into my chicken parmesan, pretending not to notice the waiter who'd just done a double take when he recognized my name. "Something like that," I said evenly. Blake leaned back, smirking. "Come on, man. You've got to be real about life. Not everyone's built for the big leagues. Some people just manage cargo." Mom laughed nervously. "Blake, sweetheart, don't tease your brother." Dad didn't even look up from his steak. "He's right, Carol. Ethan had potential, top of his class, that consulting job in New York, and then he walked away. For what? Manual labor." The word landed like a slap. I set my fork down, eyes flicking to the clock on my phone. 7:43 p.m. 4 hours and 17 minutes until midnight. Blake loved an audience, and tonight he had one. "You know, when I was 29, he began, raising his glass, I'd already made senior partner. Ethan's almost 30 and still finding himself." "Finding myself," I echoed quietly. "Exactly," Blake said, his tone dripping smugness. "You can't call a warehouse job a business. You clock in, move freight, clock out. Let's not act like you're changing the world." I leaned back in my chair, studying him, the tailored suit, the watch that screamed validation, the way he gestured like he was auditioning for success. My parents watched him like he'd hung the moon. "Blake," I said finally, "you ever wonder what's inside those boxes?" He laughed. "I don't waste time thinking about cardboard, little brother." "Maybe you should," I murmured, scrolling one last time through the draft of the article scheduled to go live at midnight. Forbes exclusive, meet the 29-year-old founder behind America's fastest-growing logistics network. The waiter reappeared, setting down fresh napkins, eyes flicking between me and Blake. He knew. He'd read it already. Blake raised his glass in a mock toast. "Here's to real success." I met his gaze. "You'll read about mine soon enough." He laughed, loud enough for the next table to turn. But by the time the clock struck midnight, the laugh would die in his throat, and for once, I wouldn't need to say a word. The headline glared at me from my phone, $2.3 billion game changer, how Ethan Cole transformed logistics from a New Jersey warehouse. The photo showed me in front of one of my automated sorting centers, wearing the same plain work clothes I wore every day, the same outfit my family assumed signaled failure. "Put that away," Carol said sharply. "This is family time." "Sorry," I muttered, sliding the phone into my pocket. Blake leaned forward with that familiar smug grin. "Speaking of thinking big, Ethan, what's the largest deal you've ever closed?" I waited as he puffed out his chest. $8.5 million downtown mixed-use project. Took 6 months, but I nailed it. "That's impressive," I said, calmly. Not everyone could handle that pressure. Last month, I'd signed the contract to manage Amazon's East Coast distribution network, worth $847 million annually. But Blake didn't need to know that, yet. Richard nodded. Blake found his calling early and stayed the course. No detours, no experiments, just pure focus. Blake laughed. Ethan here, though, is still experimenting with manual labor. The waiter appeared with dessert menus. As he handed mine over, he leaned in a little. "Excuse me, sir, aren't you Ethan Cole from the logistics articles in Supply Chain today?" Everyone at the table froze. I smiled. "Yes, that's me. I'm studying business at Rutgers," the waiter continued. "Your automation systems are legendary. Professor Martinez actually uses your operations as a case study in class." Blake's smirk faltered. "Case studies?" "Oh, yes," the waiter said. "You revolutionized automated sorting. Your company handles more freight than any other independent firm in the country. My parents' eyes widened. Thank you, I said lightly. Of course, let's take a photo. As the waiter snapped a quick selfie, I noticed the exchanged glances around the table. When he left, the silence was heavy. Ethan, Carol said slowly, what was he talking about? Probably some trade journal article, I replied casually. The logistics industry is tight-knit. People know each other. Blake shook his head. Case studies. Really? Harvard Business School analyzed some of our automation processes, I said evenly. Not a huge deal. Harvard. Richard's voice cracked. And MIT, I added. Princeton, too, but that was mostly technical. The quiet dragged on. Blake pulled out his phone. What's the name of your company? Cole Logistics Solutions, I said. He typed quickly, the confident mask slipping. This can't be right. What? Carol asked. Blake turned the phone to show the table. It says Cole Logistics Solutions is worth over $1 billion. Probably industry speculation, I said mildly. Richard snatched the phone, scrolling frantically. Ethan, it says here you own the largest automated warehouse network on the East Coast. Technically, largest private network, I corrected. Amazon's is bigger, but not independent. Carol's wine glass froze halfway to her mouth. You own warehouses, plural, she whispered. 17 facilities across 8 states, I confirmed. Plus distribution centers and our transport fleet. Blake's face turned pale. Transport fleet? Richard asked. Mostly trucks, some rail. We're testing drones for last-mile delivery, I explained. They stared as if I'd just confessed to being from another planet. How is this possible? Carol whispered. When I left Morrison and Associates, I used my savings to buy a failing warehouse in New York, I said. The owner needed a fast sale. I got it for $200,000. $200,000. Richard's voice was hoarse. Where did you even get the money for that first warehouse? Blake asked, voice tight with disbelief. Mostly savings, I said, smiling faintly. I lived pretty modestly during my consulting years, and I took a small business loan. Blake found his voice again, but it sounded almost fragile. How did you go from one warehouse to this? I leaned back, remembering those early days. Automation. Everyone was running logistics the same way for decades. I figured out how to do it faster, cheaper, more accurately. Then companies started hiring us, first local businesses, then regional chains, and finally national retailers. We grew quickly. How quickly? Blake whispered, barely audible. The first year, $12 million in revenue. Last year, $2.3 billion. The number hung heavy in the air, solid and undeniable. The family sat frozen, their expressions locked in disbelief. Billion, Richard repeated. Blake's phone buzzed, then Carol's, then Richard's. Notifications exploded across the table. What's happening? Carol asked, staring at her screen. Blake's face drained of color. Forbes, they just published something about Ethan. My heart kicked. The article had gone live early. What does it say? Richard demanded. Blake read, voice shaking. $2.3 billion disruptor. How Ethan Cole built America's largest private logistics network from a single New Jersey warehouse. Another silence fell, heavier this time. There's a photo, Blake continued. Ethan in work clothes, standing in front of this massive automated facility. Carol snatched the phone, eyes wide. This is you. That's our Newark facility, I said. Our first one. We've expanded quite a bit since then. Richard leaned closer. It says here, you're on the Forbes billionaire list. Just barely, I said modestly. Net worth fluctuates with the company valuation. Blake put his phone down, hands trembling. Ethan, you're a billionaire, on paper. Most of it's tied up in the business, I said. Mostly. Carol's voice climbed an octave. Well, some of it, at least. I smiled faintly. Last month's dividend alone exceeded what Blake made in 2 years. I don't understand, Blake said, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. You work in a warehouse. You drive an old Honda. You live in a studio apartment. I stay close to operations, I said. The Honda is reliable. The apartment is minimal because I travel constantly. Simple, efficient, practical. But your clothes, Carol protested. You always look like a warehouse worker. I grinned. Because I am a warehouse worker. I just happen to own the warehouses. Blake's phone buzzed again, then again. People are calling me, he muttered, staring at the screen. Colleagues, asking if I'm related to Ethan Cole from Forbes. Are you going to tell them yes? I asked. He looked at me like he'd never seen me before. I don't know what to say. You could start with an apology, Richard suggested quietly. Blake flinched. Ethan. I'm sorry. We all are. We had no idea. No idea about what? I asked, calm but sharp. That you were successful. That you built something meaningful. Or maybe. No idea because you never asked. The accusation landed, and I could see it reflected in their faces. We thought we knew, Carol said weakly. We thought you were wasting your potential. And throwing your life away, Richard added, being unrealistic about your future. The silence stretched on. 5 years. Every family dinner replayed the same script. Blake boasts, you celebrate him, then lecture me for choosing a different path. We didn't mean it that way, Richard protested. Didn't you? I asked. Blake spent 20 minutes saying I was pretending to be successful. You lectured me 15 minutes about realistic expectations. Mom suggested I was finding my path, like some lost child. Blake's phone rang again. He ignored it, but it rang immediately once more. I observed quietly. Forbes was already trending on social media. Your friends are going to have questions, Blake said, voice tight. What do I tell them? Tell them the truth, I replied. Tell them your brother built a billion-dollar company while you were all insisting he was a failure. The words landed hard. I could see them sting. They needed to sting. Ethan, Carol said carefully, we're proud of you. Always have been. Have you? I asked, leaning in. Because this is the first time any of you have shown interest in my actual work. For 5 years, you've treated everything I've built like a phase. Richard cleared his throat. We made assumptions. We were wrong. Yes. You were, I said. But now the question is, what are you going to do about it? Blake looked up from his phone. What do you mean? I mean, do you want a real relationship with me? One based on who I actually am, instead of who you assumed I was. Or are you going to keep pretending your definition of success is the only one that matters? The waiter appeared, drawn by the tension. Is everything all right here? Can I get you anything else? Actually, I said, standing, could you bring the check? I need to get going. Of course, Mr. Cole, he said. You're leaving? Carol asked. I have a conference call with our Singapore office in an hour. Time zones make scheduling tricky. Singapore. Blake repeated, incredulous. We're expanding into Asia. Joint ventures with 3 local partners. Could add about 800 million in annual revenue if projections hold, I explained. I pulled out my wallet, a simple leather billfold, custom-made though it looked ordinary, and placed my black American Express Centurion card on the table. "Dinner's on me tonight," I said. Blake's eyes widened. "Is that a black card?" "It comes with the territory," I replied. The waiter returned, noting the card with a subtle nod. "Thank you, Mr. Cole. I'll take care of this right away." As he walked away, I looked at my family. "I want you to understand something. For the past 5 years, I've been building something incredible, employing over 8,000 people, serving hundreds of companies, and moving billions of dollars of goods annually." They listened in silence. "And during that entire time," I continued, "my own family treated me like a disappointment. Someone who needed to be guided or rescued from poor decisions." "We didn't know," Carol whispered. "No," I said. "You didn't know because you never asked. You made assumptions based on appearances and never looked deeper." The waiter returned with my card and receipt. "Thank you again, Mr. Cole. It's been an honor." I signed it, leaving a generous tip. As I gathered my jacket, Blake finally spoke. "Ethan, what happens now between us?" I looked at him, my older brother who'd spent his life thinking he was more successful, only to realize my warehouse network generated more revenue in a month than his real estate firm did in a year. "That depends on you," I said, locking eyes with him, then sweeping a glance over my parents. "If you want to keep judging people by superficial measures, we don't have much to talk about. If not..." Richard leaned forward. "Then maybe you'll take the time to understand me, to see what I've built and why it matters. To recognize that success comes in many forms. Just because someone's path looks different doesn't mean it's wrong." I straightened my simple button-down shirt, the same one I wore daily to work. "Whether I'm checking inventory or presenting to Fortune 500 executives, my assistant will send you the Forbes article link. Read it. All of it. Then call me if you want a real conversation about my life instead of a lecture about how I should live it." As I walked toward the exit, I could hear their phones buzzing again, probably more calls from friends and colleagues who had seen the article. By tomorrow, everyone in their circles would know the warehouse worker they'd been pitying was actually one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country. Outside Sullivan's Grill, my driver waited. Not the old Honda I'd driven to family dinners, but the Mercedes I used for work. I'd kept up the facade for so long that even my transportation had become part of the performance. "How did it go, sir?" James asked as I slid into the back seat. "About as expected," I said, checking my phone. 17 missed calls, 43 texts, over 200 LinkedIn notifications. The Forbes article had gone live early. My family had just realized they'd been lecturing a billionaire about realistic career expectations. James chuckled. "That must have been something." "Interesting is one word for it," I said, leaning back. As we drove through the city, my thoughts drifted to the conversation I'd just left behind. Part of me felt vindicated. After years of being treated like the family disappointment, they finally understood what I'd built. But mostly, I felt a quiet sadness. Sad that it had taken a Forbes feature from my own family to see my worth. Sad that for 5 years, they'd worried about my future while I was busy building one of the most successful logistics companies in the country. My phone rang. "Blake." I hesitated, then answered. "Hello, Ethan. It's me. I wanted to say something." "What's that?" "I've been reading the Forbes article. Every word. And some of the other pieces referencing your company, your innovations, your impact. I had no idea, truly no idea, what you'd built. Not just the money, though that's impressive, but the actual accomplishments. The technology, efficiency improvements, the jobs you've created." "Thank you," I said. "No, Ethan. Thank you. Thank you for not giving up on your vision, even when we all doubted you. Thank you for proving there's more than one way to be successful. And thank you for showing me how limited my own thinking has been. It's a start, Blake, I said. Yeah. Next time we have dinner, maybe you can tell me about your real estate deals, and I can tell you about logistics innovations. Like actual siblings interested in each other's lives. I'd like that. Really, I would. After we hung up, I leaned back in the leather seat and smiled. Maybe the Forbes article had done more than announce my success to the world. Maybe it had given my family the chance to finally see me clearly. Maybe we could build something better than before. Something based on respect rather than assumptions. Something grounded in seeing substance, not just appearances. My phone buzzed again. Carol this time. I answered on the second ring. Hi, Mom. Ethan, sweetheart, I just finished reading the article, all of it. I wanted to say. I'm so proud of you. Not because of the money, but because of what you've built, because of who you are. Thanks, Mom. That means a lot. And I was wondering, maybe you could show me one of your warehouses sometime. I'd really like to see what you've created. I looked out the window at the city lights, thinking about my family, my company, and the future I was still building. I'd love to show you, Mom. I really would. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. Sometimes, it's giving them the chance to see they were wrong, and helping them grow because of it. And sometimes, a Forbes cover story can help a family remember how to really see each other. The warehouse where it all began was only 20 minutes away. Maybe it was time to bring them.